Try this. Turn off the air conditioning on the hottest day of the year and start a timer. Within an hour, your shirt is soaked through. Within a few hours, you cannot think straight. By the time the sun goes down, your home has become an oven that does not switch off, and the night brings no relief at all. We like to imagine we are tough, that our ancestors survived brutal summers, and so could we. And they did survive. But the way they did it would genuinely shock you. Air conditioning is barely 100 years old, and in that short time it has quietly rewired where we live, how we work, and who lives through a heat wave. So let us switch it off completely. This is a summer without air conditioning. It begins the moment the cold hum dies. At first, it is nothing, just a room getting a little stuffy. Then the heat starts to stack up. Warm air pours in through the windows and refuses to leave. The walls, the floor, and the furniture all soak up the heat of the day and radiate it back at you long after dark. You open a window for relief, and all you let in is more hot air and the noise of the street. By the afternoon, your body is in real trouble. You are sweating buckets. But the air is so humid that the sweat will not even evaporate. And evaporating sweat is the one trick your body has to cool itself. Your heart beats faster. You feel dizzy, sluggish, and strangely irritable. This is not just discomfort. Extreme heat is one of the deadliest forces on Earth, quietly killing more people in many countries than floods, storms, or any other kind of weather. In a severe heat wave, an apartment with no cooling and no airflow can become a genuine death trap, especially for the very old and the very young. Your body is superb at shedding heat when it can sweat into dry, moving air, but seal it inside a hot, still, and humid box, and that whole cooling system quietly breaks down, which is exactly why a stifling room can be far more dangerous than it actually feels. And then comes the worst part, which is the night. You lie on top of the sheets in the dark, drenched, staring at the ceiling, waiting for a coolness that never arrives. Your body needs to drop its temperature slightly to fall asleep, and it simply cannot. You drift into a thin, sweaty, broken sleep and wake up more exhausted than when you lay down. Do that for a week, and you begin to understand why, for almost all of history, the hottest months were something humans simply had to endure. So how did people survive whole summers without a single machine to help them? The answer is that they were far smarter about heat than we are, because they had no other choice. They could not change the temperature, so instead they built their entire world around escaping it. It started with the building itself. Before air conditioning, houses in hot places were designed to work as cooling machines made of stone and wood. Walls were built thick, sometimes from heavy mud, brick, or stone, so that the fierce daytime heat took many hours to soak through, and by the time it did, the cool night had already arrived. Ceilings were built high because hot air rises, letting people live in the cooler layer of air near the floor. Windows were placed directly across from one another, so that any breeze would flow straight through the house and carry the heat away, a simple idea called cross-ventilation. Many homes in hot regions were also built around a central courtyard, often with a fountain or a small pool at its heart, so that the splashing water cooled the passing air and the shaded yard stayed pleasant even at noon. Windows facing the harshest sun were fitted with carved wooden screens, known in the Arab world as mashrabiya, which broke the glare into cool shade while still letting the breeze slip through. In the hot, dry lands of ancient Persia, people went much further and invented something remarkable: the wind catcher, known as the badgur. This was a tall tower rising above the roof, with openings near the top, designed to catch even the faintest breeze and funnel it down into the rooms below. Many were paired with an underground channel called a qanat, so the incoming air was pulled across cool water deep underground before it reached the living space. The air arrived cooled and freshened, all without a single drop of electricity. It was, in effect, natural air conditioning built out of mud brick and clever design, many centuries before the machine existed. The ancient world was full of ideas like this. Wealthy Romans, it is recorded, circulated water from their aqueducts through the walls of some grand homes to cool them, and certain emperors reportedly sent runners up into the mountains to bring back snow. In ancient Egypt, people are believed to have hung wet reed mats across their doorways and windows, so that the dry breeze blowing through the damp reeds was cooled by evaporation, which is the very same principle as sweat drying on your skin. Then there was the muscle-powered fan. In India, wealthy households used a punkah, a large cloth fan hung from the ceiling and pulled back and forth by a rope. A servant known as a punkah, walla would sit and pull that rope for hours, sometimes through the entire night, keeping a single room stirring with a faint, steady breeze. It was human air conditioning, and it depended completely on somebody else's tired arm. For everyone else, staying cool was about behavior, not machinery. In many hot countries, people adopted the siesta, shutting everything down and resting through the blazing middle of the day, then coming back to life in the cooler evening. They wore loose, light clothing in pale colors that reflected the sun instead of trapping it. They planted shade trees around their homes and sat beneath them. In the evenings, life spilled outdoors as families gathered on porches, in courtyards, and in gardens where the air actually moved, and often they simply stayed there until it was time to sleep. And when it was finally time to sleep, huge numbers of people did not sleep indoors at all. Across the hot regions of the world, from the flat rooftops of the Middle East to the porches of the American South, people carried their beds outside and slept under the open sky, where even a slight night breeze beat the trapped heat indoors. In many cities, sleeping up on the roof on a hot night was completely ordinary. For those who could afford it, there was also ice, hauled in from frozen lakes and stored, with fans set up to blow across the block and push a little coolness into the room. But that was a luxury, and the ice always ran out. Much later in the hot and dry American West, people discovered they could hang wet pads or blankets in a window and blow a fan through them, building simple evaporative coolers, sometimes nicknamed swamp coolers, that could genuinely chill a dry room for very little money. In humid places, though, where the air is already heavy with water, that clever trick barely works at all. There was one machine that arrived just before true air conditioning and helped bridge the gap, and that was the electric fan. Once homes began to receive electricity in the late 1800s, small electric fans started to appear, and for the first time a person could stir the air all night long without another human being pulling a rope. A fan does not actually cool the air even slightly. It simply moves it, helping your sweat evaporate a little faster. On a truly dangerous, humid night, a fan alone can fail. But for millions of people, it was the only powered relief they had, and for a great many, it still is today. The machine that changed all of this was not even invented to keep people comfortable. In 1902, a young engineer named Willis Carrier was asked to solve a problem at a printing plant in Brooklyn. The humid summer air was making the paper swell, and the colored ink smear out of alignment. Carrier designed a system that blew air over coils, chilled by cold water, which pulled the moisture out of the air and controlled the humidity. Cooling the air down was almost a side effect, but he had, without quite meaning to, built the first modern air conditioner. The name came a few years afterward. In 1906, a textile engineer named Stuart Kramer, who was working on adding moisture to the air in cotton mills, coined the phrase air conditioning. At first, this new technology was strictly a tool for industry, used in factories, printing houses, and mills, where controlling the heat and humidity protected the products being made. The moment ordinary people first truly felt it was inside the movie theater. In the 1920s, cinemas began installing Carrier systems, and they advertised the cool air just as loudly as the films themselves. On brutal summer days, people flooded into the dark, chilled theaters simply to escape the heat, and Hollywood soon learned to release its biggest films in the summer, which is the real origin of the summer blockbuster. For an enormous number of people, a movie ticket was the very first taste of air conditioning they ever had. Getting it into the ordinary home took a good deal longer. Early room-sized units appeared around 1929, and window units arrived through the 1930s, but they were expensive and rare. After the Second World War, prices finally began to fall, and sales exploded, climbing into the tens of thousands and then into the millions. By the late 1960s, most new homes built in the warm parts of the United States came with air conditioning as standard equipment. In just a few decades, a factory machine built to dry ink had quietly become a basic feature of everyday life, and what it changed is far bigger than mere comfort. Air conditioning quietly redrew the map of where human beings could comfortably live and work. Whole cities in scorching regions, from the American Sunday Belt to the modern desert metropolises of the Gulf, exploded in population only after cooling had made their summers survivable indoors. Millions of people moved toward heat they never could have tolerated before, confident that they could always step into a cooled building. It transformed work as well. In cooled offices and factories, people could stay productive right through the hottest months, instead of grinding to a halt. And studies suggest that comfortable temperatures genuinely do help people think and perform better. The long-serving leader of Singapore, Lee Kuan Yew, once called air conditioning one of the most important inventions of the modern age, precisely because it let people in the sweltering tropics work steadily through the heat and build a modern economy. It also made possible entire technologies that simply cannot run hot, including the vast server farms that power the internet, along with much of modern medicine and manufacturing, all of which depend on being kept cool. In hospitals and during deadly heat waves, air conditioning does not merely add comfort, it directly saves human lives. But none of this came for free. Air conditioning uses an enormous amount of electricity, and in the hottest cities, it can drive a huge share of power demand on the very worst days, sometimes pushing the electrical grid right to its limit. The machines pump heat out of the buildings and straight into the streets, which makes crowded cities even hotter outside. And the refrigerant gases sealed inside them have been a genuine problem because the earliest ones damaged the ozone layer and were banned, while many of their replacements are powerful greenhouse gases now being phased down in turn. There is a strange loop hidden in here because we burn energy to cool ourselves. And that same energy use helps to warm the planet, which only makes us reach for even more cooling. So the next time you step out of the blazing heat into a cool, humming room and feel that instant wave of relief wash over you, remember just how new that feeling really is. For thousands of years, human beings fought the summer with thick walls, wind towers, wet reeds, and somebody pulling a fan by hand, and mostly they simply endured it. You get to press a single button. Life without air conditioning would not kill most of us, but it would change absolutely everything about how and where we choose to live. See you in the next one.